What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Overseas Famous podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Owens. Holy shit. And really cool show for you tonight. Talking a little bit of entrepreneurship with Tremaine Dalton. Tremaine founded The Process, and I know a lot of Sixers fans are going to be like, what the fuck is that? Is that a Sixers thing? No, The Process is a really cool training operation, basketball training operation that actually Tremaine was a very, very good one-on-one player, played professionally in Israel, France, Australia, ended up starting to teach overseas athletes, foreign athletes, how to play a more Americanized style of basketball. And he kind of flipped it around where we're so used to kind of looking at that foreign game and being like, okay, what are they doing here? Now, the one thing the foreign players don't have is that one-on-one skill. They're a very team-oriented system. So when they actually have to play one-on-one, it's not always successful. So Tremaine has been going around the entire world. When we interviewed him, he was in South America. He talks about Paris. I was able to, do clinics in the most prestigious basketball courts in the world, Australia. He's been everywhere doing basketball lessons. He's also really done a lot with the communities, teaching, talking about domestic violence, talking about gun violence. He's had, proclamations from lots of government officials thanking him for his work. Also does it foreign as well. Talked about the Estonia, Russia, how there was like a lot of territory disputes and claims, and really worked on trying to fix those up. So really a cool thing, really a cool interview with Tremaine. It was a lot of fun. So without further ado, here we go. Tremaine Dalton, Overseas Famous, The Process. Enjoy. What's up, everybody? Here with Tremaine Dalton. Trey, you've played in Italy, France, Australia. But the coolest thing is what you've done after your career, which is create this incredible enterprise called The Process, where you're training athletes. And it's such a great idea. I was thinking about this for like days and days, how cool of an idea it is to train foreign born players with like more of like an American style of basketball, which is just incredible. So you started it as a way to kind of, help some of these guys develop their one-on-one skills. What did you see why did you see that was like such a big need in overseas athletes?
Well, for starters, it was Israel, not Italy.
Israel.
Israel.
Yeah.
I want people to, do their research and get it all wrong. Isn't
it crazy? Like when people are like, oh, you played here. And I'm like, yeah. And then they're like, oh, did you play in like this? I'm like, no. Like, it's just like, we're very particular about, like, hey, no, like this is where I played. Cause you don't want to get like labeled and be like, oh yeah, I played in Italy and, I was in this and this and like, no, but like, this way I got this.
Yeah, but it's for a reason because I have a deep relationship with Israel.
Oh, nice.
For example, one of my big clients is James Young.
Okay.
Out of Kentucky, and I was a part of him doing well in Israel over the last 3 years, and he's playing for Hopewell Tel Aviv out there, and he's dominating. Yeah, and also Roman Sorkin, he plays for the Israeli national team. Jeez. So I got a huge relationship with the players in Israel and the culture and everything like that. I was out there for 4 years.
It's crazy because like you started this business and you have these incredible athletes from all over the globe. Right. And when you look at this, when you really came into it, do you look at like the different styles and where you're like, oh shit, this is how they play here? Like you're in Israel and you're like, okay, they play this way. You go to, you're working with some guys in Australia or Asia and you're like, okay, they play a little bit this way. What different styles did you notice when you were kind of getting into the training?
Australia, they play completely different than the way they play in Europe. It's a different, everybody plays aggressive. Everybody plays tough, but it's a different type of aggressiveness. Even something as small as the fast break is different. And how I got into Europe anyway was I just fulfilled a niche. because you can see like the European game is starting to develop. The athletes are getting better because of the mix of cultures. You know, for example, in France, they got a huge African community. In Australia, they got a huge South Sudan community. And everybody is starting to mix with the culture. So the actual, like the physical skill sets are starting to even out more or less. But the difference between, I feel the difference between the United States game and everybody else is that killer instinct. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
more or less it's small differences in every style around the world, but what separates us from everybody else is that mentality, that kill zone, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about the kill zone. It is crazy because when you mentioned Australia, when I was in Australia, I played in New Zealand for a little bit, and those physical guys, like you would just go, and even like the younger guys, I remember, you know, guys like Steven Adams, like you practice against them.
Right.
And it's just like he's this skinny kid, and he like kind of hits you, and you're like, "Oh shit!"
Right,
like,
right.
All right, I'm like the big guy here. Like I'm a lot bigger than you, but they just have that physical mentality. It's just a really cool thing to see. When you look at that, what do you think? And you talk about that killer mentality of like the United States, of like that American killer. What do you think is like that most successful style of basketball? Do you think the United States, like having that mentality, separates us from like the rest of the pack, or do you think that European game is really coming along?
No, I believe the United States game is the most important. We're the best. The reason why I feel that way is because our emphasis on a bucket. It's simple. Like we got to get a bucket. In Europe, in a lot of other countries, the dominant sport is soccer. So what I realized over there is that a turnover isn't as important as it should be, or a missed shot isn't as important as it should be. So when I came along, when I got into Europe, I was emphasizing to a lot of European players that a bucket, you got to get this basket. Like it ain't no ifs, ands, or buts. You got to get this basket. And that's why I believe the process, it just grew so fast. And because I can communicate it to them, I can make people feel comfortable. But America, the emphasis on the bucket, the Kyrie Irvings, the KDs, even LeBron now, because he's trying to surpass Kareem. The emphasis on the bucket. At the end of the day, that's what basketball is about. It's about getting score. It's about scoring.
And you a great one-on-one player, and right. Winning tournaments as a one-on-one player. Obviously, right. Tremendous score in your professional career, right. And teaching that. Was it difficult to kind of teach some of those European guys, or those not just European but foreign-born players, to have that killer in them, to be a dominant one-on-one player when their emphasis is really on trying to pass the ball around, trying to move a lot of those European or foreign-born basketball tendencies? Did you find it difficult to try to have them hone in on, you need to get this bucket right now, and that's the most important thing?
Well, a lot of trainers, they can't. I don't want to take nothing away from a lot of people, but they can't necessarily prove their theories. So I go in it with like a whole Bruce Lee mentality. I'll give you an example. I trained some of the Estonian national team. That was about 2-3 years ago. We went to a private facility in the north of Estonia, closed off. We just trained. No cameras, it was some cameras, but no nothing. And they wanted to understand what this whole one-on-one was about. So I just pulled them to the side. I was like, all right, let's play king of the court. You know what I'm saying? I ran through everybody. And when they felt that energy, plus with their playbooks and everything like that, then it was just an understanding. It wasn't about language. It wasn't about specific communication. It was just about killer. They just understood it, because at the end of the day, I'm a coach. And if the coach is beating you, that means it has nothing to do with athleticism. That has nothing to do with even the intellect of the game. It just, if you can add that killer dynamic to your game, everything else elevates. And if you can prove it, then naturally the player, because of his own personal, a basketball player's got ego. They don't want to lose to a coach. They don't want to lose to anybody. So if you can tap into that ego, then it'll make them elevate as players.
I love the, kind of breaking those bad habits. It's funny when you as the American, when we go overseas, you're used to, you have to be that guy who's scoring. So you teaching, I played in Estonia. I was with BC Kalev. And like some of those guys, they looked a lot to the Americans at all times to be like, all right, score. And I think that's just an incredible thing to kind of teach them, like, you don't need to rely on this. Like, let's just get the best players in general playing on this team. That's going to make us a better team, as opposed to being like, let's bring 3 Americans over, 2 Americans who can just score the shit out of the ball. Let's bring, you guys can score the shit out of the ball, but let's bring in some Americans who can do everything. And now we're a team. And I think that's building that, building that is really tough. Now,
Right.
you've trained both American athletes, you've trained foreign-born athletes. Do you think there's
Right.
one that's more difficult, you know, not difficult, but is it different training an American athlete compared to training like a foreign-born guy
Well, for me,
or
it's
girl?
not.
Sorry.
Yeah, or girl, yeah, either way. For me, it's not because what I do is I mix every time I have a training session in the summertime, I make it real Fight Club like. I bring foreigners, I bring Americans. We go to a private place, we train, and I put them all in scenarios where we all got to go against each other. And I think just the rawness, what we've lost in basketball is the rawness of it, the pureness, the Rucker part. You know what I'm saying? The whole rawness of the game. And I just feel like I was able to communicate that rawness through my one-on-one to the game that makes players, more aggressive. Because I believe I got 100% success rate. My top clients, everybody is winning. Everybody doing their thing. From David Michanu to James Johns, Roman Sorkin, Brenton Lamar, Ronald Marks in France, all these guys, they're doing their thing. You know what I'm saying? So I believe that a lot of people, they rely too much on analytics. They rely too much on schematics and everything like that. But what about basketball?
Yeah, and even like thinking about that, I know Joel Embiid just came out today and was just talking about. He's like, you guys are, not saying it in so many words, but everyone's like looking at a computer and being like, okay, this is
Right.
what, Joker does really well. But are you watching the game? Like, are you getting back
Right.
to that raw form of the game?
Right.
And I think it's so important because I think there is so much put on statistics and analytics
Right.
that when you have that raw, you start teaching that raw game, bringing it back to like that 80s, 90s style where like guys could, I'm going to take you one-on-one. And
Right.
that's like
Right.
that's where basketball became the most popular sport on the planet when those
Right.
guys were able to just, go into that
Right.
that zone.
Right. And what I teach specifically is it's not just 20 dribbles, blah, blah, blah. It's capitalizing on the moments. Whether it's a pick and roll, whether you get to the 45-degree angle, whatever the case may be, I teach those moments. I take a player's game, cultivate that specific training around his game, and then we take advantage of his sweet spots, his moments. You know what I'm saying? So another example, when I train James, every time I go back to Israel, we pay attention to all his sweet spots. And every time we worked, he succeeded. Like he had big games.
I think that's the hardest thing to teach a player. I think that's what separates really good players from average players. Your ability to be in those situations and know what path to choose. Like you said, pick and roll. Having a player be able to make that decision and decision making, it's hard to teach decision making unless you're playing. So if you have this technique to train a guy to be, or geez, I keep saying guy, I'm going to get punched in the face. So if you have that opportunity to train a player to make those decisions and train them to make those decisions in game situations, you've just elevated that player's game tremendously.
100%.
And that's incredible. That's like an incredible thing. And I think, talking about, you're not only an incredible basketball trainer, you do a tremendous job with that. But you've crossed barriers and you've created this whole entire empire built based on building and community and creating a community and culture within basketball. How do you think like basketball can really help build that community within a separate country or a different place?
Well, in today's climate, it's crazy right now. From what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, everything is crazy right now. COVID, everything like that. And I think philanthropy is so, so important. And I use my platform because I'm training like Matthias Lazort, he plays for the French national team. James Young, he's originally from Michigan. I'm originally from Michigan too. So every year I do a gun violence program because we got a huge gun violence program out there. Problem out there. Or let's say, for example, in Estonia, I go there every year. It's a huge Russian community out there. So I do camps with the United States government, like almost diplomacy and peace talks and stuff like that. And it's the same thing with Israel. Like, I go out there and I do different camps and stuff because what's going on out there. And I just try to emphasize peace, and I try to emphasize just using basketball as a tool for peace. In France, for example, I did the follow-up camp to LeBron James's More Than an Athlete campaign. And one of my kids, Adonis Arms, who plays for Texas Tech, You know, hopefully he can get in the league. You know, he just entered the draft. He was there. You know what I'm saying? And he was just giving back. And then he does a water drive. We do a water drive in Phoenix. That's where he's from. We do a water drive in Phoenix, Arizona every year for free. You know, because we try our best to use our platforms. That's what the process is about. Using our platforms to give hope, to, you know, to show peace. It's just not about juggling the ball. You know, this same kill energy that I'm giving, I'm using that same energy for peace, to emphasize it, to give back, to help communities, to help kids, you know, the whole nine, but around the world, you know.
It is really incredible what you're doing, and you really hit on what that sports, when people don't play sports or people don't understand sports, it's hard to explain to someone the impact that not only athletics but a coach. I'm watching this Coach K video, and I'm not even like a Duke fan. They beat us in the NCAA tournament, like whatever. But like watching that video, seeing this, you know, what sports brings, what coaches bring, it's really such an powerful thing. And what you're doing of, you know, having promoting that and promoting it in ways where, you know, there's conflict and you're like deadly conflict, and you're putting it into a peaceful resolution using a game is just it's incredible. And it's also it's unique to be able to find that common ground within a sport, to have these people create this peaceful resolution to something that could have really been a damaging, you know, physical thing. And that's incredible. I just think that's incredible.
Well, thank you, man. Basketball, I just learned it brings people together. Yeah. You know, me being from Michigan, you know, I had to go to different neighborhoods and play. And at the end of the day, we all hooping. It's no problem. Yeah. So that is common sense. Like if I could take this in Detroit, Grand Rapids, Pontiac, Michigan, Chicago, you know, Flint, wherever, I could take it around the world. You know, because Michigan is, to me, is one of the worst. You know, especially with the gun violence and everything that's going on. I found opportunity in who I am and what I do, and I believe in it. Like even right now, I'm in Panama, Central America. You know, wow. And a lot of the camps that I do is for the homeless here. You know That's what I'm saying? Incredible. Yeah, and I'm just blessed to be in this position, and I'm just trying to create a legacy with it. You know,
I love it. And you know, you're spreading this initiative. You're spreading basketball in these areas that, you know, might not have that. And I always said, you know, you look at soccer, which we were talking about. Like I always saw it like in the European and the foreign places, like just kids would be able to pick up a soccer ball and go to a field and play. And it's the same thing with basketball. I feel like there's always courts. There's always a place you're going to find. You can always go and play. It's just like that's breaks it down to, like you said, that raw part of it. And that's just the great thing about some of these games. And we talked a little bit about the women's game. You've done a lot of great things. We've had a lot of, you know, we had some WNBA players on the show before, and some very good women's basketball European players. You've done a lot of really good things with women's basketball as well.
Thank you.
Trying to, you know, spread the word about women's basketball, because I know, you know, we talked a lot of the conversations everyone has is women's basketball. They go overseas to make money because the WNBA doesn't pay in time. And we, you know, trying to fix that. But also you mentioned, you know, how women's basketball, it's really not, it's professional basketball is tough, and a lot of women don't push it because there's just not enough places to play. There's not enough opportunities available to these women. And when you look at that, what do you think, like, is the reason behind that? Why do you think that women's basketball isn't taking off the same way men's basketball is? I mean, I know women's basketball, I just watched the Final Four last night. I just watched the national championship last night. So obviously it's catching up. But what do you see that the need that needs to be filled with women's basketball in this world?
I believe it starts with development. I think that is the thing that will really help women's basketball grow. And that's what I try to emphasize when I deal with the women's players that I got. Khalees Lloyd, she plays for the Swedish national team. She's actually one of my first women's clients. And I flew out to Sweden, we just got busy. And then you get to see the passion, and you get to see how much she wants to learn. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think it's enough development going into women's basketball. Plus, you know, a lot of cultural things, depending on what country you go to or whatever the case may be. But if we can find more ways to emphasize women's development just as much as we do with the men, I think it's going to grow. I think it's going to exponentially grow, you know, because you're going to see more passionate players. A lot of women, they don't even play because they're afraid of just different cultural things, whether it's too masculine, whatever the case may be. But if you invest more into the development, more and more people will feel more comfortable with playing. You know, that's what I think.
It's funny because even, you know, basketball people that I know, I mean, I'm a big proprietor and I enjoy watching women's basketball. I have a daughter who plays basketball, so I'm like very involved in it. But even people I talk to, they're just like, oh, even, you know, females, they're just like, I don't really want to watch the girls' game. They're like, it's too slow, it's too this. So I think what you're talking about is just, it's, you know, starting from the bottom and being like, all right, let's make these players that same build so they're able to do the same things. And I know, you know, we talk about, you know, different body types, but if you're developing them to be a little quicker, do this and create that game where it's going to be more exciting, I think that could be the big draw to the men's game.
Right. And even the development process. Like you see, everybody got YouTube videos of them training. They going to different places, going to the best runs, like the runs in Miami, or, you know what I'm saying, the runs in LA or UCLA. If we could get that type of content for women's basketball, it'd go crazy. That's what I think.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like just development every day, training, putting in that work, you know, and I think it's out there, but I think if we just put that same emphasis, that same energy from the bottom to it'll just grow. It'll just blow up.
Well, it's crazy because, you know, you're talking about like developing the women's game and what you do as a trainer. You really have to use social media because that's really what's getting the word out.
Right.
When you look at social media and you look at, like, you know, the Hanlons and the Johnsons and the guys who are like, you know, constantly putting stuff out and they have these NBA clientele.
Right.
Like, do you think, you know, building that social media brand is so important when it comes to building all players or even overseas? Because I know I'm trying to, you know, show people what overseas basketball is like. Like, I feel like I'm on like social media way too much because I'm just trying to be like, hey, this is what's going on over here. And I'm like, this is freaking exhausting. How is it for, you know, a trainer to be, you know, doing all the things you're doing instead and, you know, trying to promote on social media?
Well, for me specifically, social media isn't even I don't really need it like that. Like, that's not where I get my business because I harp on quality and confidentiality. It's not, social media is great. It works for who it works for. And I throw my little glimpses out there too. But the majority of this stuff I put out is me playing people one-on-one because I want my players to feel comfortable about what we're doing and it's only for them. And a lot of times when I'm preparing players, I'm preparing them for like the world championships and stuff like that. I don't want everybody to see what we're doing when they got to compete each other for the Euro Championships or the World Championships anyway. You know, so I'm really basic. Like for me, for what I do, I try to keep even when I put my videos out of the players, I'm not specifically showing what we're doing. I'm just telling the story, like creating a narrative of, you know, why I'm there and what we're doing together. But I really harp on that quality and that confidentiality because I want my players to feel safe in what we do and feel comfortable in what we do. But on the opposite spectrum, social media can really help you out. Social media can really help you take off, especially if you got quality videos, if you're really doing the right thing, if you really believe in this training. And yeah, it can really help you in a lot of different ways.
Well, I love your entrepreneurship. A lot of the athletes we've had on this season have, you know, retired overseas pros, moved on to the entrepreneur world, which is, you know, it's a scary step to take when you really have to jump out into this whole new world, what you're comfortable playing. But you started off, you know, training kids in Australia.
Right.
How did this grow into like what it has become, this incredible worldwide program where you're currently in South America doing things, you know, doing camps and stuff like that? How did that grow into this whole entire enterprise?
Well, at the end of the day, man, I'm a cool guy, you know, and so my network is extensive. You know what I'm saying? Every country I go to, I also work. I connect with the community. Like when I was in Israel, I was working for the Israeli government. You know, I was working in Holon, Jesse Cohan, which is like a kind of a tough neighborhood in Israel. And I was the director of sports and education. So I'm connecting with the community, the Eritrean community and the African communities there, doing projects while I'm also, you know, playing in the second league, or I was a practice player for Haifa, you know, so it wasn't about basketball for me. Basketball was a platform that I could use to connect with people. And it's the same thing in Australia. When I went to Australia, I was doing free camps for helping hoops, working with the South Sudan community. Some of those guys ended up going to Division One. You know, some of those guys came close to going to the NBA. So every time I go back to Australia, they showing me love. You know what I'm saying? Plus, I was working with Nike. I was doing Nike tournaments and all that stuff. So I'm taking advantage of both sides. I'm working with the brands on the one hand, but even though I'm with the brands, I'm not too good to engage with the community and stuff. And it's the same thing in France. Like when I go to, every time I go, France is my second home. Every time I go to France, people show me love. I got commercials out there for street ball. I go to the parks. I'm playing with everybody. But then I'm also training people like Matthias Desort or David Michanu, who are world-class athletes out in France. You know what I'm saying? So it's a broad spectrum, but I'm a part of all that spectrum. You know what I'm saying? And in Japan, like, you know, I got an anime. Yeah, like Old Man Dalton, that's what it's called. I'll send it to you after this. And I have some Japanese partners. They got a basketball app called basketball1on1ranking.com. And I had an endorsement with them. And then, you know, we started doing anime videos, all types of stuff like that. So I got a connection out in Japan as well. And I've never been. I'm actually going pretty soon, but I've never been. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just a cool guy. Like I always pick up the phone. I always shoot a text. You know what I'm saying? Like, and a lot of people,
Yeah.
I think once they get to a certain level, they start to separate where they came from. Whereas, you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's exactly what I found. I think a lot of athletes kind of, once you reach that level, it's almost like everything else, like you're this top athlete, everyone else is below you. You're gonna like they're gonna do things for you, like you don't have to worry about. And you know, even with what we're doing with Overseas Famous and like trying to help, you know, athletes find careers after they're, you know, done, trying to teach like some of these young guys and being like, hey, you have to, you know, 15 minutes a day, you have to spend 15 minutes a day thinking about your future. And they don't want to. And you showed just going out there, being in the community, building those relationships, building that has reaped this incredible reward that most guys don't really want to do when they're there. They're like, I'm here to play basketball. I'm a star. Like everything else is beneath me. And I think that's just having that attitude is so important for you for an entrepreneur to be like, I'm going to build those connections. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm going to take advantage of it.
Right. Yeah. All these countries, man, I can go there with no GPS, no nothing.
That's
you know,
crazy.
I know exactly where I'm going. I know the people. I know where to go. Like when I land, you know, I got the right people coming to get, it's just, all these places are my second and third home. Melbourne is my third home. Paris is my second home. Panama is my current home now. I can go back to the States. Like, it's just about network. It's not even about money in a sense. You know, the money gonna come regardless. But if you got the right network, all your dreams will really come true. And like, obviously, you know, I'm living in Panama right now, you know, so.
And I always think about like entrepreneurship, and the one thing that, you know, a lot of the people who want to get into entrepreneurship, they're like, what are the routes that I take? Do I build it from something, you know, kind of starting with this training program here, and or do I like have this whole thing and be like, I want to get funding, I want someone to give me money to buy into our whole entire product right now, and then build? There's two different ways to do it. Which way did you think is probably the more successful?
See, I'm a big believer of working horizontally. I do it all. Like everybody thinks vertically. They say, oh, you got to take this step. You know, nah, I'm going after it all at the same time. If I need to build my platform, I'm gonna build my platform. If I need funding, I'm gonna contact who I need to contact. If I need to be out in the field doing community initiative, I'm doing it all at the same time. So you got to think, if I'm training the biggest player in that country, why wouldn't I take that player and go into the community with that player? Why wouldn't I get in touch with the local news and tell them what we're doing? You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, last time I was in France, I was in Oise, France. That's one of the biggest newspapers out there. And I just did a free camp. So once the newspaper does its research, they're like, oh my God, like, why is he here? You know, and then I get to tell my story. I get to express myself. Another magazine, Reverse Magazine, which is it's a huge magazine out in France. And I'm in like LeBron James is in this magazine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like and I'm in it. And I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Like, wow. You know, but it's just based on that network. And I just believe I'm a horizontal guy. Like, I'm going after it all. You give me an inch, I'm taking a whole football field. You know? Yeah, that's my thing, man.
Yeah, it's refreshing when the GPS thing is still blowing my mind, because as soon as you've been saying that, in the back of my mind, it's been circling. Like,
Right.
if you drop me in some of the places that I played, would I have any idea? And I'm like, I feel like in Australia, I'd be good. I'd be like, all right, I'd be
Right,
able to
'cause
get
that's
around
easy.
Cairns. Like, I
Right,
remember enough. I was like, if you drop me in like some of these places, I'd be like, Kosovo, I'd be like, I don't know where I'd end up. I'd be like, so it's crazy when you have that, you've been so familiar with it.
right.
And you have the lucky, it's cool that you're able to go back to these places. Like, I thought about, I'm like, when I left, every single time that I played somewhere, I'd be like, I would walk away and I'd be like, I probably will never set foot in this country again. You have this great outreach where you're able to bounce around and still be involved in the basketball communities of places that you played. And I think that's just incredible for you to be able to get back into these places and like be able to call them almost like a second home, a third home, a fourth home. I'll probably never, who knows if I'll ever step foot in some of these places ever again.
No, man, in Paris, I can get right off the CDG and I can take you right to the Louvre. No GPS, no nothing.
Awesome.
You know what I'm saying? We can land in Tel Aviv and I can take you right to Jerusalem. No problem. You know what I'm saying? Or I can take you to the street walk courts in Tel Aviv. We can go up to Haifa. I can take you to the kibbutz. I can do all that. Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, because I feel like once the countries, they embrace me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I show them love back. We all people at the end of the day. It's just basketball. So if people love basketball, why not use it to make people happy?
Now, when you were building this, I always think about like a family. Like, I think about, you have your extended family, your basketball family, and then you have like, I have, a daughter, and, this thing that goes with it. So when you're trying to build a business, and I know it's been tough because I start getting on a roll and I'm like, oh shit, Liv has soccer, and I'm like running out the door. It's like tough. Did you ever, when you think it's harder with a family to build a business, or do you think it's like you just have to put out the time?
Right. It depends on again what your goals are, and it depends on how much you and your family believe in the business. If your family believes in the business, anything can happen. But if you 1 foot in, 1 foot out, halfway in, and you worry about money. Like, I understand everybody got responsibilities. We all got bills. But at the end of the day, it does take a family. It does take a team to believe in what you got going on. I got 2 sons, you know what I'm saying? So they're part of what I got going on. If I feel I'm like one of the biggest or one of the best trainers in the world, they're going to play basketball. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, with that horizontal thinking, I engage them in the camps. I take them to the gun violence things. I take them to, I do the whole thing. I have them a part of all of it so they can get that exposure and it can awaken their minds up, because it can go deeper than just basketball. The same example I gave you from CDG to the Louvre. If my sons are going to the Louvre, they might become artists. It's something that they get to see with their eyes. Like, and it's just creating as much exposure to your family or to whoever within the business. That's the way I think, and it can work. It really can work.
You're just it's just creating so many opportunities for not only the local people that you are helping with these camps and these training, but like you said, your actual children are experiencing such incredible things that not many kids would be able to experience. I always say, when what has happened being an overseas athlete, by 27, I'd been on like every continent. I'd done things that it's just crazy to think. And the people never even, leave their hometowns. And it's just such an incredible experience to then pass that on to the next generation and have them experience these incredible things as well.
And it's even cooler when your kids is in your comic book.
Yeah.
I put my 2 boys in it so they get to watch it. They're like, whoa, So, but that's what I try to provide for my kids, for my family, for friends. I try to create as many opportunities as I can with this platform. It's for me, it's just putting the ball in the hole, and the reception we get for putting the ball in the hole. Like, the opportunities are endless. It's not like accounting is hard. Being a doctor is hard. Being a scientist is hard. But basketball is not to say it's not hard, but you are just putting the ball in the hole. And the reception that you get from it, you should take advantage of it in all ways. So.
And I think that might have just answered my last question, which was the advice you have for, overseas athletes as they kind of start winding down their career. What would you say? I know you just that was incredible, just talking about the experiences and things like that, but what would you say to someone who might want to follow into that entrepreneurship and build their own business? What advice would you have for those overseas athletes who are thinking about retiring and moving on into that next step?
I would personally say, whatever country you're in right now, get involved with the locals, get involved with the city government. You're already a superstar, right? So every time I go to one of these countries, I get the stadium on Kevin Hart treatment, because I'm involved with the people. I'm already working with the American government and stuff, but I'm involved with the people there too. So get involved with the people, the locals, because they always gonna see you as a fan. If you play for, let's say, Levallois in France, right? It's no different from playing for Duke. They're gonna love you forever, especially if you're performing. So they always gonna be customers. You can sell T-shirts, you could be a carpenter, whatever you want to do. They're gonna love you for the rest of forever. Especially if you perform, especially if you do camps and you communicate. If you connect with the community and stuff like that. So like the next step, if you decide you want to be a trainer, if you want to do camps, you still got that customer base wherever you play.
Yeah.
So if you've been to 10, 20 different countries, always continue those relationships with the people in those countries, whether it's people in the city government, whether it's players themselves, whether it's the national team. Do as much as you can, because a lot of players, they just sitting around playing video games all day.
Yeah.
Like, right after practice, they go on to play video games. Nah, walk around, go connect with people, go meet with people, even go to the club, whatever you want to do, whatever floats your boat. Just try, but just try your best to connect with as many people as you can, because it'll open doors so far beyond basketball, even if you just want to take a vacation,
Trey, this has been a really fun conversation.
And thank you, man.
I really do appreciate your just what you do. I appreciate like you said, you're a likable person. Like, you're a fun person, and you could see it right here, because you really do make people feel. It's just like I feel like I want to run through a wall right now, because I do think there's like such a great way that you have about you, and that's helping build those relationships. And I wish you like all the best in all of your success. It's been incredible. I'll definitely have to head out to Paris, and you can take me around, show me the city.
Man, we can go hoop, man. We can go to Hoops Factory. We can hoop whenever, man.
I love it.
Those are my people's over there. Yeah. So whenever you want to do this again, just let me know.
Absolutely.
We trying to put a project together with the Olympic Committee out here in Panama.
Oh, nice.
And I'm building a facility here as well.
That's
so
incredible.
It's really, it's just really to give back. It's really to give back. It's really because South and Central America, they got a lot of potential.
Yeah.
And I just personally want to invest into that potential for it to grow. And that's why I'm here, man. I'm using this basketball, milking it for as long as I can.
So Tremaine Dalton, Overseas Famous Podcast. Great job. Amazing. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
All right.
All right. Talk to you later.
You too.